Anyone who thought the firing of CM Punk would result in the end of any drama in All Elite Wrestling are sorely mistaken. This is just the beginning of a major issue that's going to dominate the next few years. Now, I have lots of information here, particularly from starting CM Punk's side, then Tony Khan's side, as well as details on what happens now and what happens next, because I have no doubt in my mind information is being leaked right now by CM Punk, by Tony Khan, in order to ensure favourable outcomes if this ever does go to trial. Let's start with CM Punk's side and see what he has already explained is a large part of the issues that he's been having with AEW, as well as quite a bit of exclusive information you can't get anywhere else. Subscribe for more. Now, this actually originated before CM Punk joined AEW, when a deal was offered to him that was believed to be quite a lowball offer for such a top commodity. There was a pause in his time on Fox in order to consider this, but it ended up going absolutely nowhere. And it wasn't until about a year later, when CM Punk was actively negotiating with both AEW and WWE, that an offer came in for about $3 million that he was happy with. This does come into play later when he's looking for a buyout, and when it comes to the legal term "with cause" that Tony Khan used several times in his statement. The crux of the issue when CM Punk was in AEW was the Elite, that being Kenny Omega, Hangman Page and the Young Bucks, going into business for themselves. Now, this is the consideration from CM Punk's angle, just to be clear. The Elite are accused of consistently leaking personal and untrue information to wrestling journalists such as Dave Meltzer. There is a long-standing issue between CM Punk and Dave Meltzer because of this. There is some evidence to suggest that this sort of thing does happen in wrestling. There are prolific leakers in the WWE, otherwise the whole cottage industry wouldn't exist of WWE backstage news, and this does happen in AEW as well. But there is also evidence that Tony Khan has instructed individual wrestlers to follow and interact with certain wrestling journalists, QT Marshall making it clear that Fightful Sean Ross Sapp was one of these people on Twitter many moons ago. With this being clear that it does happen, it doesn't necessarily mean that it was the Elite doing so. That said, CM Punk now is very clearly leaking information of his own, with his hallmark on the everything being reported currently by House of Wrestling. There was the buyout negotiation after CM Punk walked away from the company after All Out, or Brawl Out as it's become known. CM Punk was attempting to get bought out of his contract to essentially say, if you don't want me to come back, just pay me the rest of what I am owed. It was quite a considerable amount, in the region of $2 million, and Tony Khan did not do so. Instead, he worked around the situation to bring CM Punk back. CM Punk has made it very clear that he was or felt abandoned at the airport in London. He was not picked up by an AEW representative, which is unusual to say the least, and had to make his own way to Wembley Stadium with the help of a collection of fans. The day of All In, certainly not a day that CM Punk will remember with any particular fondness. But there is more to it than just what happened at All In. There is now being reported, again from House of Wrestling, that CM Punk had negotiated a meeting to take place with the Elite, that again being Kenny Omega, Hangman Page and the Young Bucks, where the FDR would also be in attendance, as well as Tony Khan. The intention for this was to essentially have disaster talks to make it so the Elite were happy to appear on Collision and to make it all water under the bridge. Tony Khan had been pushing for this for a long time. Upon his return, CM Punk started pushing for it as well. The Elite are not believed to have been particularly interested, and it is being reported by House of Wrestling that the Elite cancelled that report. The reporting currently being offered by House of Wrestling, there's no hiding it. Nick Hausman has been very honest about this. It is clearly coming from CM Punk's side, because if he is reporting that CM Punk was left alone at the airport, there is literally only one person that could have reported that, to him. CM Punk's concerns that led to the all-out situation is that he was believing that AEW was failing to protect workers. This is why he was stepping in to try and prevent glass from being used on spots. This is, of course, what kicked off with Jack Perry. A number of people in AEW were keeping their heads down, were unwilling to step up to CM Punk, but ultimately were extremely unhappy with how things were going. Jack Perry did not allow his head to be bowed. There'll be more on Jack Perry shortly and the situation, what he may be facing in the days to come. Switching to Tony Khan's side now and his take on a number of these situations, there was that initial embarrassment about CM Punk rejecting the contract offer only to accept it shortly afterwards. This sense of embarrassment does sort of follow Tony Khan over the next few years of CM Punk's involvement. One of the major embarrassments was that he was sitting next to CM Punk when CM Punk went into business for himself and accused the Elite of going into business for themselves, making particular attacks towards members of the media such as Dave Meltzer, who Tony Khan was attempting to engender very good relationships with. Tony Khan at that moment really very clearly did not know what to do and wasn't able to stop CM Punk from taking liberties and taking that speech too far. He has accused at times CM Punk of a lack of professionalism, a lack of accountability, and of course, a lack of availability. For quite a large part of CM Punk's contract, he hasn't been involved in AEW. Tony Khan refused to spend the $2 million rough money that would be required in order to keep CM Punk from returning, and instead, he considered a different approach for CM Punk, essentially blowing smoke, working with CM Punk's ego, and encouraging him to return to a show that would be branded as CM Punk's show, that being AEW Collision. We're going to be talking about the AEW Collision deal because that is seriously in doubt at the moment. CM Punk was the main reason a new show was launched, was due to be the main person around everything was orbiting, and the real World Championship was introduced as a World Championship purely for Collision, so the Collision felt like a show in its own right. When it comes to All Out and Brawl Out, as it was previously mentioned, there is a belief from a lot of people within AEW that it was the Elite in the right. There are very split camps here, but from Tony Khan's point of view, there certainly hasn't been any other issue with the Elite, whereas there has with CM Punk. One of the last straws was Christopher Daniels being banned from Collision, which Tony Khan himself was not happy about. He had actively been speaking to CM Punk to get that undone, but the actual kickoff point, which Tony Khan has very openly said before this week's Collision, is that he was afraid for his own safety and, to go further, afraid for his life. Reports are clear, primarily from Wrestling Observer and Fightful, and of course PW Torch's Wade Keller, boss of mine, that monitors were dropping onto Tony Khan and damage was being done to the gorilla position when Tony Khan had to deal with the fact that CM Punk was choking Jack Perry. Both CM Punk's side and Tony Khan's side and Jack Perry's side all agree that CM Punk was the aggressor and he started choking Jack Perry. That physical altercation, the escalation to a physical altercation, is a huge part of why Tony Khan feels comfortable firing CM Punk. What happens now? That's the big question here, because the relationship between CM Punk and Tony Khan, which was still a positive relationship, is now fractured beyond repair. CM Punk had threatened to quit, per reports, in the day of All In, but had not chosen to actively do so. He was not informed of any particular suspension because the day was coming when he was going to be fired, and Tony Khan simply seemed to believe that it was more than enough knowing that there was a physical altercation. Tony Khan has considerable evidence to take if ever it does come to lawsuit, particularly the video footage from Wembley Stadium, which showed CM Punk attacking Jack Perry, despite the fact that Jack Perry was in his face, speaking up as it were. The escalation to physical is where Tony Khan believes he's in the right. You will also note that in the statement that he released, Tony Khan used the phrase "with cause" on several occasions, and this essentially is a way of stating that this is gross misconduct, it is breach of contract, and it does mean that CM Punk's contractual clauses will not be honoured. That means no buyout for that $2 million plus, and it also means no non-compete clause for people thinking he'll be popping up elsewhere. Tony Khan spoke before Collision, and in many ways, the way he was speaking was a clear attempt to protect himself from a lawsuit. At no point did he say, "I fired CM Punk." Instead, he worked around it saying, "That's why I did what I did." Meanwhile, CM Punk has already started releasing information. For example, this information about a meeting with the Elite being cancelled by the Elite that paints him in a more positive light, or at least that is the impression that I am getting from House of Wrestling's reporting. What next then? What is next for CM Punk? Can you expect to see him in a WWE ring anytime soon? The short answer is no. It's really that simple. Triple H is not a fan. The only reason he would ever bring back CM Punk is to bury him and to end his career once and for all, and CM Punk fully knows that. It is more likely that CM Punk will make a return to the UFC, which is ironic considering Vince McMahon now runs both the UFC and the WWE, but Vince McMahon would be much more amenable to a return for CM Punk than Triple H will be. There is not going to be a return to AEW. This firing is not something that can be come back from. In fact, I doubt we're going to see CM Punk wrestle again. You have to recall that after 2014, when he left WWE, it certainly wasn't a short amount of time before he returned to wrestling to begin with. Instead, personally, I believe this is about to get extremely messy with a big lawsuit incoming and both men with a lot of evidence on their side supporting their endeavours. There'll be more information for this as it comes out. Be sure to hit subscribe and be sure to check out the rest of my work on the Tom Colohue channel.